Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing. It's match day as Celtic get set to take on Ross County in the Premiership, and we're joined today by Alison McConnell. How's it going, Alison?
Not too bad, thanks, Sean. Yourself?
Aye, good. Aye. Now, before we start, can I just remind everybody that it is a 7:45 p.m. kick-off tonight, and also, while you're on here, if you watch us on YouTube, just click on that wee subscribe button so you get a notification when we go live. That'd be much appreciated. But now that those formalities are out of the way, I think we dive into predicted lineups, Alison.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think necessity being the mother of invention. I don't think there are a huge amount of options, particularly across that front three. I think there's a real paucity of options. I think the injuries picked up by James Forrest and Mikey Johnson just handicaps Ange Postecoglou further at a point when you're already without key players. The one consideration I do have is whether or not Juranovic could play further up, play in a more advanced role. I'm not sure if that might offer something. My suspicion is that Abada could play through the middle tonight, possibly, or Turnbull stick to the way it panned out at the weekend, really, with that front three almost exchanging the role as the game goes about. But I think we have spoken about it to death this season. I think what you're really seeing now is a squad at the bare bones. And although numerically, I think Celtic probably do have a large squad, I think what you don't have at the minute is like for like when key players are out.
That's it. That is exactly it. I think I was on a day off yesterday, so I just caught up with you and Tony's predicted lineups, and I've got to say one thing that really jumped out at me was both of you have picked Liam Scales, but not at left back.
The thing about Scales,
yeah,
I thought that. To be fair, I wasn't convinced about that when I know I put it in. I wasn't overly convinced about it, and that's where I think that Juranovic could come in and feature, because obviously he can play both left and right. But the thing about Scales is I think he looks as though he's got quite a bit about him. I think he looks quite physical. I think obviously we've seen a goal threat from him too. I wondered if he just might be a wild card almost to come in on a cold December night, going up to Dingwall on a tight pitch against a compact team who have a free hit, essentially. I think Ross County will be boosted by the wins and the points that they've picked up in recent weeks. They've really pulled everyone into that relegation fight. I think you see St Johnstone and Dundee very much down there now too. So it's a free hit for Ross County. No one expects them to do anything against Celtic. If they pick anything up, it's a bonus. They will be, the game that's going to play out tonight. You've seen it often. You know that they will camp in. You know it will be about Celtic having to try and break them down. And as I mentioned yesterday, it's a different game. If Celtic score first and score early, it's a very different game. But the longer the game goes like that, the more at risk I think it becomes of getting stayed and Celtic toiling to find a way through. And I think when you have players like Kyogo and Jota out, players that you really look to influence that kind of thing, I think you now need players to accept some responsibility and step up to the plate. And you're thinking here of the likes of Tom Rodgick and David Turnbull, Callum McGregor, players who have the capability of seeing a pass and executing a pass and opening up a game like you'll see tonight.
You're right, County are actually in good form. I mean, they've only lost once in their last 5, and that was to Rangers. And you're right again to mention that they've dragged everybody else into that relegation fight, because they're now off the bottom of the table, albeit it's only on goal difference. But in terms of when you're saying give maybe a free hit and giving Scales a shout wide left, would you envision it on the tight pitch and stuff almost being like not in terms of his ability or anything, but almost being the way that Samaras was used later in his Celtic career, being wide left, a target to hit if all else fails, that kind of
thing? Absolutely. That was almost the thinking behind it. That I think we don't know an awful lot about him. I think we've only seen him in glimpses. I thought he played well. I thought he was one of the few that acquitted himself well last week. You saw the goal. I think when it comes to a real dearth of options, I think it might be a consideration.
Well, Tim and on here agrees with you. Scales wide on the midfield, although I know you didn't have Juranovic necessarily there, but that is a question though. I mean, there's a comment here. Sean Curran might see Ralston get some minutes. Is that a consideration? I mean, we saw the last 15 minutes of the game against Motherwell where Ralston came on, played right back, and Juranovic played right wing. So obviously you've alluded to Juranovic maybe moving up, but do you think the chances are he goes Juranovic and Scales, or it'll be one or the other being moved up and Abada slotting in the other one?
I think the likelihood it's probably one or the other, and I do tend to think it might be Juranovic that does push further up. The more that you give it consideration, and the more I thought about it last night, the more I thought it made sense. There was another wild card that I thought of. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think you'll see it, but Rocco Vata has been scoring goals. Like if you follow some of the performances of the younger team, Rocco Vata has really stood out both in club and international football this season. I wondered if this would be an opportunity to draft in a player like that just into the squad. I don't think he would be anywhere near a starting lineup, but I did think, would there be an option to bring someone like that in and expose them? I think it's probably not the circumstances to do it when there's so much pressure just now in terms of not being able to drop further points. But I think when you consider just how few attacking options there are, it would be interesting to see if there's scope for maybe introducing someone from the underbelly of the club and bringing them in.
Simon Thomas there mentioned Vata in the comments. Obviously, as far as we're aware, Johnston isn't going to be risked, but Vata, he mentioned him. What about Owen Moffat? He's another one. I mean, he's wide left. He tends to played in pre-season, albeit it was before a lot of signings came in. That there's less to worry about when there's injuries to give some of these players not necessarily, as you say, not necessarily a starting space, but certainly to get them in and maybe come on as an impact sub. But maybe you could argue both ways. You could argue it's too much pressure to put on them to give them the chance and expect them to get you out of a hole if you're in one. But on the other end of the spectrum, when else are they going to get a chance? If everybody's fit, they're probably not going to be in the squad. So it's kind of a balancing act with that. I suppose we agree in midfield it's probably going to be Rogic, McGregor and Beaton, unless of course he pulls it out of the bag and moves Turnbull further back and maybe plays Abada through the middle. But I think just because of the dearth of options up front, you would imagine it will probably be Turnbull again in that kind of central role, asked to do a job, which I thought he actually done. He done okay. He done his best work. I kind of mentioned it in the data match report. He done his best work in attacking midfield positions, which I think is probably natural to him. But ultimately, I would almost have gave him a bye anyway because he was asked to play in an unfamiliar position, and I think he done as well as you probably could expect.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think for the likes of tonight's game, I think the move that you saw, the set piece move that led to the goal on Sunday, I think these are so important in games like this. I think you do have to make the most of them, whether it's corners or free kicks. I think it's sensible to have a plan and to try and pull something off. It worked on Sunday, and I think it was clever. But there was a bit of intelligence behind it, and I think that's what you need. I think you need to maximise opportunities in games like this that are tight, when there's going to be so little space to exploit and manoeuvre. I think it's crucial to make the most of any set pieces that you get. The other consideration I thought was possibly Rogic playing in a more advanced role, but I don't know if you compromise the team by that because you miss out on some of the better work that he does, some of the creative work that he does in the middle of the park. I don't know if that's just too much of a loss if you play him further up field, but what I think is these guys are intelligent enough and have enough game awareness to rotate almost at times and to try and find pockets of space, which will be key tonight.
You see, this is that is the kind of that's the risk you take when moving players about and out of position, because certainly, as I say, Turnbull's best work was done to me in traditional attacking midfield and positions. It wasn't really the Kyogo areas, if you know what I mean. So it wasn't really playing as a Kyogo replacement. He kind of tried it in his own way, but almost I felt he kind of enjoyed that kind of freedom of when he was dropping deep. Nobody really knew who to pick up. Nobody really knew who was to pick him up. And almost it reminded me, I know it's different times, different formations and stuff, but it almost reminded me when Andy Tom moved back being a striker into midfield, and he felt it was almost the opposite from Turnbull, but he felt like he ended up with a wee bit more freedom. And I just wondered if possibly, if it is Rogic, if that kind of thing would happen where he would actually find even more space. The difficulty then being someone's got to make the run beyond him though. So
yeah, he can't do it all. You know, you need you need someone else to be there, and that's when I think the relationship between players comes into play. That's when you see the understanding. I think so often good players are on a very similar wavelength of being able to see the pass and to read the move, and I think you can't look to one player to do too much. They can't take on the responsibility of it themselves. They need an understanding from those around them too.
Mm-hmm. One more for the kind of front line. Adam Montgomery come into your thoughts at all? Or?
He did. I thought, again, I think he will play a part tonight. I'm not sure if he'll start, but I think he will play a part. Again, I don't think he's done much wrong. I think in the games that we've seen this season, I think he should be pleased with the contribution that he's made. I think Greg Taylor's probably likely to start in front of him so long as he's fit, but I think Montgomery could come in and offer an option further up too. I'm not sure that he'll start, but I think he will feature at some point.
I mean, he's barely played on the left wing really this season.
Yeah.
It usually has been as a left back or an auxiliary left back, but he played both games against Betis. He played on the left wing. The first one in particular, I thought he'd done well. Obviously, the second game they won, but it was a makeshift team, so there's only so much you can read into that. It'll be different propositions, it'll be different players to link up with and stuff. But Ange Postecoglou does seem to like him, so I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be that surprised if he does throw him in at left wing. There is obviously the option that you and Tony have both put forward of Scales for a more physical option on a tight pitch, which you've said. But what I would say is that in terms of County, I've said about their good run of form to get themselves off the bottom of the table. At the start of the season, going like 3 or 5 at the back, but since then they've pretty much went with a 4 at the back. I don't necessarily see that changing just for tonight, especially given that they've been playing well. They don't tend to have the ball a lot, but despite what might be assumed, Celtic actually win more aerial duels per game or in total, than Ross County do. So I don't necessarily think that the aerial stuff might be where they look to hurt Celtic as much. I think it'll probably be sitting in, but then it'll be the pace of their flanks rather than anything else. It'll be Reagan, Charles Cook and Joseph Humboldt to me they'll pose the danger to Celtic.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that completely. I think it's quite a surprising start, right enough, about the aerial duels. I wasn't aware of that. But like you, I think what they'll try and do is hit Celtic on the break. I think they know that Celtic will commit players forward. I think the onus is on Celtic to go and take it all 3 points. I think they'll be patient. I think they will have odd chances in the game. It'll be about trying to be clinical when they take them. I think that'll be, Malky Mackay's advice to go and keep your composure in front of goal. If you get one chance in the game, that you try and you take it. I would say that Celtic have looked fairly composed defensively. I would say that tentatively. I think in recent weeks, I think Carl Starfelt has settled in. I think it was a fairly difficult start from him, and Ange Postecoglou's touched on this a couple of times about players that came in without really being able to have a full pre-season and join in, but that were thrown straight in. And Starfelt was one of the guys he mentioned is basically walking into the club and all of a sudden you're in these huge European qualifying games with a makeshift team and a team that was really on its knees given everything that had happened last season. But what I think you have seen in the last month or so is the best of him. I think you're seeing some pretty commanding performances in Joe Hart too. I thought Joe Hart had a pretty big save against Motherwell on Sunday. And I think it's one of the real differences this season is that you have a very assured goalkeeper at the back. I think you can sense it. I think you can feel it. And I think the longer that you have a settled back four playing together, and certainly have the two centre-halves playing together, I think the better scope for understanding.
No, I agree with you. I think I wrote earlier in the season about specifically centre-backs, the amount that they'd switched, and I think it was as Postecoglou's first 14 games or something, it had been 4 different pairings or 5 different pairings or something like that, and then they'd switch sides in amongst it and stuff. It wasn't conducive to getting good regular runs of clean sheets, which I know he says he's not going to pop champagne corks for, but I'm happy enough with clean sheets. And I think that is key. I think also you've got to remember Joe Hart went through 2 games in a row where it'd be wobbly moments and wee blips and stuff. But for me, I think that is going to happen. But crucially, this season for him, it's not undermined any of his performances. It's bounced off him in a way. Even if he has had a wobbly moment, he still tends to have had a good game overall. And then the next week, it's not played in his mind. In the next game, it's not played in his mind. And I think that is very, very crucial, especially compared to the likes of Barkas and Bain that Celtic fans had to watch the last couple of months, the last year.
Yeah, I just think his personality is probably as much of a key to his ability. I think he has a real sense of self-belief. I think it comes across in his performances. I think that's important, particularly with the position that he plays, and I think it's a very difficult role. I wouldn't envy a goalkeeper. I think outfield players can make a mistake and it slips under the radar. A goalkeeper is one mistake and it's magnified because of what it leads to. But I think he's a type of personality who can cope with that. I think he does have the ability to dismiss it, and he knows that he's a good goalkeeper. I don't think there would be any question about Joe Hart's background or what he has to offer. And I think Joe Hart knows that himself. And I think what comes across is a very confident goalkeeper. And I think you need that to play that role.
A couple of more comments here. Sean Curran mentioning Ewan Henderson. It's a decent point. Tim Anon saying I think we're giving County too much credit. Possibly, because I'm going to move on. I'm going to ask you for a score prediction here, but there's one right away for you. 3-0 Celtic. Would you think, Alison? What's your score prediction?
I don't think it'll be as comfortable as that. I think it might be a bit tighter. I would agree with some of the points here. I think when you look at the resources of both clubs, Celtic should be going and winning at Ross County, but I think they'll make it difficult. I think I'm going to go for 2-1 Celtic.
Well, I do think it'll be a tough game, especially with the injuries. An early goal, obviously, always crucial. But I mentioned in the data match report the other day, I think it was 7 1-goal margin of victories. Recently in the last, I think that in the 15-match run of 13 wins in the last 15 games, which is actually a good thing if you ask me. That it's not always got to blow somebody away. You can win by 1 goal, and I think it might be that again. I'm going to go 1-0 because I think they will. I think that defence is almost the first choice defence, you could argue. First choice keeper, obviously. So I think that will keep Ross County at bay, and I think it'll all come down to how early they score. But I'm going to go 1-0 and play my cards a wee bit closer to my chest than usual. There's plenty coming in here saying 3-0, but and there's also a 1-1, but we'll maybe not go there. But no, thank you, Alison, and thank you everybody for getting involved. Thanks for joining us today. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and also check the website later on, where there'll be match ratings and reaction, and we'll catch you back here tomorrow to chat a wee bit more about what went on. Cheers.
Thanks, Sean.